Hey, so welcome everybody to the Great Resignation Roundtable. Thank you for your time whilst I run through our housekeeping. So why the Great Resignation? That's the big question. And we've been having this conversation for the past, I think, since the pandemic began. And I noticed even through doing my project for my master's that one of the themes that came up for leaders in business was the Great Resignation. I didn't really know what that meant. And so I've been speaking to a lot of business leaders in my community, and Julie Jackie in particular, about what does it really mean? And so there is a big question about what it does mean. And I thought we would start with a poll, and then I'm going to hand over to Julian Jackie to do a bit more. This is our entry poll. I want to gauge your thoughts about, what are your thoughts about the Great Resignation at the moment? Can everybody see that poll coming up now? Great, thank you. So I'd like to just see what our thoughts are. You know, some of us might think it's just a fad, we'll get over it. I'm curious, not sure. I'm slightly confident things are going to be great, or I'm not confident at all. We need to explore this topic in more depth. I love people's curiosity. We've got, oh, okay. Interesting. I love the curiosity of the group. So we're nearly there, a couple more to go. Fantastic. So it seems like we're all curious. There's a majority of us, 42% of us are curious and slightly confident that there's a shift for forward and future change. Some of us are not really sure what this means, and some of us are not confident at all. And that's okay. And some of us think it's a fad. And that's true as well. Who knows? We just don't know the answer to that. So I'm just going to share the results with you now. So that now leads me to introduce Julian Jackie, who are co-founders of the Business Health Institute. Now, Julian Jackie specialise in working with organisations to manage their bottom line. And effectively how they do this is by focusing on employee health, well-being, stress and burnout, which has been one of the big factors that I've noticed in some of the readings around the Great Resignation. And I'm sure we're going to have our input through that. So using data and analytics, the team at Business Health Institute helped to balance the workforce pressure, establish systems for long-term impact. So this topic is very close to their heart. And that's why we've brought us together today to bring together our knowledge and our thoughts around what this topic really means. So Julie and Jackie, I'm going to hand over to you for a couple of minutes to introduce yourselves.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks for having us back today to just take this conversation just a little bit further. Yeah, fascinating times, Great Resignation. What does it all mean? How can we explore it? And how can we help? Basically, Jackie and myself came together about 3 years ago because we've both experienced workplace burnout. We started our business just before the pandemic, which has been very exciting and challenging in equal measure. But we're all about using science and educating people into how we can support businesses. And this is one of the things that's really come out of the last couple of years is the uncertainty of what is going on in organizations, and what will leaders and organizations look like going forward, bearing in mind people have shifted. You know, people have left organizations to move into new places. They're working with, you know, what their value stream is. There's lots of reasons, and part of that is what we're going to explore today. Would you like to add to that, Jackie?
That's it again, Sue. Great. Thank you to everybody, and you're very welcome. Yes, I fully support everything that Julie has said. And what Katie says, I'm a very curious person. And one of the things that we like to do at Business Health is we like to get to the bottom, the causation of what's going on and understand it. Because once we understand something, then we can take decisive action. But otherwise, we're floundering around in the dark, not really knowing and making guesses. So today, you know, let's explore. We don't have all the answers to the Great Resignation, but I'm sure between us together, we can all come up with some really interesting facts and maybe ways forward. So I'm looking forward to the discussion, and I'm curious too to hear what other people have to say and share.
Thank you very much, Julie and Jackie. And it is a very hot topic right now. And so the next part of the agenda is about introductions, because we're all strangers here for many of us, and we've all joined in from all over the world into this discussion. So I'm going to call your name, and if you'd like to quickly unmute yourself and in less than 30 seconds, just who you are and what you do and what brought you here today, that will be a really nice way to do it. And Jeff, I can see you first on the screen there. Over to you.
I lost 3 seconds of my 30 seconds. So I'm Jeff. Those of you who have met me already will know me for wine. And it was a pleasure to meet many of you at the recent wine event. But I'm here with my other hat on today. I specialize in providing cognitive skills and communication training to the global insurance industry, particularly Asia Pacific and Europe. I'm based in Portugal, Spain, and London. And I'm here today because my main work is around cognitive skills, communication skills, and upskilling the global insurance industry. So I'm interested in the skills angle of what role that plays in the Great Resignation.
I'd like to call Chris Bennett.
Oh, hi. I got okay, Chris Bennett, that was easy. House brands. My real interest about this is because I think that the whole kind of working environment is changing and values are becoming increasingly important, and that's where I kick in, because you know, Katie, that we've developed this toolkit all about why me, and that's all about somebody being able to understand how to articulate about themselves with purpose, blah, 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 blah. But the real issue for me is one of, is probably, isn't it, I'll chuck this in there, isn't it time we jump the CV in favour of a values-based recruiting system? There you go.
Yeah, love it. Thank you very much. Mike Phillips.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mike. I work as an executive coach in the UK and the Middle East predominantly. Also work with my business partner on occasion, Gail, who's on this call too. And we work with some NGO, well, not-for-profit charities on training, development and coaching. Interest in this area is that different clients in different parts of the world are experiencing this shift. So I was interested to hear what people on the call are talking about. I'm just curious about what the experience is. Some people seem to see it, others not at all. So
Thanks, Mike. It's great to have you here. Anna Stobart.
Hi, I'm Anna Stobart. I run Hafton Consultancy, and we're a firm of HR consultants who support small and medium-sized businesses as well as charities. So I also work in the international NGO sector. And my interest is really around the fact that a lot of my clients are looking at pay reviews at the moment because they are struggling with hard to find posts. And they are also struggling with the hybrid model and which model to go with. So I'm finding that all my clients perhaps have a slightly different approach. And I think that's how it has to be. So it's about how we can be flexible and work with a whole broad range of clients to make it work for them. So that's why I'm interested in the Great Resignation. Thanks.
Thanks, Anna. They're really interesting things that are going on right now. And we'll be talking about that. David Booth, over to you.
Hi everyone, David Booth, Nugent Sante. I'm here today really on behalf of my CEO Paul, but he's asked me to come along because we share similar values and interests in the Great Resignation. I think partly because we supply health and wellness employee benefits. So a lot of the impact, and I think what's just been said in terms of when you look at payroll reviews, most of the talks now are around benefit reviews. So big interest in the demands, the needs, and really understanding the future impact of what the Great Resignation will have and how we can help and adapt.
Thanks, David, and hats off to Paul for sitting on our panel discussion previously, and thank you for coming today. And over to Erica Hartz, who also was on our panel previously. Erica, it's lovely to have you on. Would you like to share?
Sure. My name is Erica Hartz. I'm with the company Reesmarks. We are a global expansion firm with a specialization in recruitment. I was lucky enough to be asked by the team here that if I could speak on the first resignation Globinar, and it was quite enjoyable, as well as it sort of opens up your eyes to hear different industries' takes on the Great Resignation, what they think the trends are going to be, and everything like that. So I thought would be fun to come and listen to even more opinions and more takes on it from different industries. So yeah.
Thanks, Erica. And your technical insights in terms of recruitment will be very interesting today as well. So looking forward to that discussion. Gail Hunter.
Hi, Gail Hunter. I obviously work with Mike on a number of things and on executive coaching in particular, but my other interest is from an HR perspective. I consult for, well, I was an HR director for a hospitality company up until recently, and I still consult with them. And I think for an industry that was massively hit by COVID and had massive great resignation, a greater than great resignation, and the whole hybrid working and how that works in an industry where actually you still have to come to work to serve your customers, and how we compete with other industries that don't need to do that is something that I'd like to sort of explore and understand other people's opinions as to what it means in terms of how we work moving forward.
Thank you, Gail. I think that everybody's curious about what's next, especially for industries like hospitality in particular. Thank you, Gail. Graham Pryor.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. I'm Graham Pryor. I'm over at Expert HR. So we're not an HR consultancy. We're more around data. So in terms of where salaries are going, we've got sort of a live rewards platform that sort of we're benchmarking salaries across the UK. So I'm just interested to see sort of the challenges people are having. We're seeing a lot of organisations sort of struggling with attracting talent, and seeing a real shift towards diversity and inclusion with organisations. And I've come from a tech background, and I think tech especially is struggling with that. I see some of the tech leaders, what they post on LinkedIn, and yeah, it's just they're completely behind the behind the curve in terms of what they're doing. So yeah, I'd just be interested to see what everybody else says. I think that's my 30 seconds.
Thank you very much, Graham. And James Dietrich.
Hi there, guys. James Dietrich from Acclime. Acclime is an international professional services company, effectively taking the stress and the confusion out of moving internationally. Around 800 staff globally, but with specialism in Asia and the US. So everything from company registration to ongoing tax and bookkeeping, accounting, resident directors, these kind of services that will help businesses set up internationally for the first time. My sort of interest in the discussion today is twofold. The first, quite pragmatically, I'm relatively new to Acclime as head of business development, but how we can work with the global chamber and how the roundtables actually work, and getting closer to sort of the networking opportunities included with yourselves on today's call. And then the second piece is where we are helping businesses move internationally and set up for the first time. They're quite often in the position where they're looking to poach staff in territory. And so understanding on an international level, or by region, how this sort of phenomenon is sort of presenting itself is at least good for us to sort of get an understanding of, because we'll partner with HR services and recruitment companies to help them if required, but just a general understanding is always key.
Thank you, James. So it's something about the knowing about the issues, and then there's the doing part off the back of it. How do we do to make better? So thank you for that. Lena Lou, my friend.
Hi, Katie. Good to be here, and thank you very much for having me. I'm Lena. I'm the founder of L Factor. L Factor is all about growing businesses, their partnership and business network. We advise our clients usually are in Europe and in Asia, mainly tech companies. My other hat is I'm with the Westminster Business Council, the strategy director there, and we're growing businesses in and around Westminster. Here today, really to learn more about this Great Resignation. I think we had a lot of corporates members in Westminster, and I think the idea now there's more and more startup SMEs, etc., who's probably doing a lot of resourcing there, and it's just an idea just to learn more about the thinking, etc. So thank you again for having me.
Thank you, Lena. It's great to have you. I'm going to call Mary Asante.
Thank you, Katie. Hello, everyone. I'm Mary Asante. I run a consultancy called May Sante Consultancy. I specialize in executive and leadership coaching and development and HR consultancy services. I work predominantly with technology companies and SMEs. In terms of my interest in the Great Resignation, I think there's a real opportunity for innovative way of working for all companies, especially to increase the reach of the pool of candidates that they can potentially attract to the organizations, and also come up with ways where they can retain the employee or the workforce that they already have. Flexibility and the underlying principles and values of the Great Resignation is not a new concept. It's just that loads of companies have paid lip service to it for a long, long time, and the pandemic probably forced the hands of most of organizations to change their views. But I've seen already lots of clients rushing to go back to how things were before the pandemic, and others embracing it and looking at new ways of working to retain their staff. So yeah, thank you.
Mary, thank you for sharing. Olive Cordingley, good to see you, Ollie.
Good to see you, Katie, and everyone else. Yeah, so I'm Oliver, the founder of OurGen. We're a student platform that educates students on what employers actually want, and what our end goal is to help employers become relevant to the student audience. So that will build a sustainable workforce, so then they can attract the best graduate talent without stupid ads and high recruitment fee costs. So that's our main aim. And here supporting BHI as our partners as well. So looking forward to hearing from those two.
Thanks, Ollie. It's great to have you on today. I'm going to call Steve Desborough.
Yeah, hello there, everyone. I'm Steve Desborough from Fidelis. I've worked in the corporate employee benefits market for many, many years, and just recently set up an SME and individual consultancy with Tina, who's on the call as well. I'm interested to see how the changes are moving on, so that we can identify those risks and share them with our clients and our prospective clients.
Thank you very much. I'm going to now call on Ivan. Now, Demosthens, I'm hoping I'm saying that right.
Pretty close. Ivan Demosthens. Good morning, everyone. I'm here in Cincinnati, Ohio. My company's name is Hamilton Demo. We do executive search, professional placement, and help companies with their recruiting strategies, as well as consult on their recruiting technology. And my interest here is really here in the United States. There's still a pretty deep discussion on what's really driving the Great Resignation, and trying to understand it as best I can, so I can share with my clients and bring some knowledge to them from other perspectives as well.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us, and good morning. I'd like to bring Lisa Pearson. Thanks for joining us, Lisa. You've just jumped on. I'm just trying to find you now. There you go.
Good morning. My name is Lisa Pearson, and I am from TFG Staffing and Consulting. And my reason for joining today is, normally the history in our staffing career has been all about, finding the right person for our companies. But a lot of the companies we work with now are having challenges, not only finding talent, but also retaining talent. So I'm hoping today to learn some more techniques and understanding about the Great Resignation, because many people that we work with are seeing talent leave. And so we found ourselves in a position lately where we've been really focused on internal processes with our clients, and just different things that they can do, marketing, how do they position themselves in the market, and those kinds of things. So anything that we can learn today to continue to support the acquisition and retention of talent is going to be so super helpful for us.
Thank you, Lisa. And where are you calling in from, Lisa?
I am calling in from Atlanta, Georgia.
Fantastic. Good morning to you as well. And I'd like to go over to Ruby Golo now. You there, Ruby? Okay. What we'll do now, I thought I saw Tina, but she must have dropped off. Have I missed anybody? Could you please put your hand up if I've missed you, if you haven't had a chance to introduce yourself. Wow, that's the first tick for me. So I've passed. I've actually been able to get round to everybody. And can I just say, just listening to you all, there's a real collective purpose here around what we would like to know. And I think this is going to be a great discussion. I don't think the next half an hour is going to be enough for us. However, let's do our best. And when we do our breakout rooms, I think it'll be interesting for you to continue those conversations. Now, I want to thank everybody who was able to send through their questions to start with. Now, we've kept them anonymous just because we wanted to start off with the questions that people were thinking as they were registering for the event. However, I would also like for you to write questions into the chat bar around maybe the thing that you shared with us. Maybe you could type it in the chat bar. Maybe it's something we can park. Use that chat bar as much as you want, and you can have conversations in that chat bar as well. So the way we're going to do it, just to remind you of the housekeeping, you have a raise hand button under the reactions tab. This is a virtual event, so it's a little bit more challenging to handle it. So if you raise your hand, I will then ask you to share your thoughts after we raise a question from the group. Now, if I see an interesting question come up in the chat bar, I'll also add that into the mix as well. But the first question I'd like to ask, there's a few brain teasers in here, but this one I think is a hard-hitting topic. Many of us shared it. What is an effective way to manage and retain new employees or internal job changes?
Julie, do you want to answer that one?
Okay. So Jackie and I, as I said earlier, we started this business coming from a complete perspective of stress and burnout before the pandemic. My background is finance, and I believe that I've always measured performance within an organisation, you know, where your costs are, what makes you profit, reducing your overheads, all of those things are always measured within a business. So when Jackie and I started this business, we thought, right, we both experienced burnout. How can we measure it? And we use science-based data. And for me, in a nutshell, I don't want to go into all that now, but for me, it's about measuring your people experience. And if you measure and support the individuals to help them thrive through work and understand what their needs are and the organisation's needs are to move forward, that puts us in a stronger position. So for me, it's about measuring. And when you're measuring an individual who's coming into the business over a longer period of time, rather than traditional, onboarding is often traditionally quite short term, and you're supporting that individual and you're finding out what's working for them, what's not working so well for them, and you're helping them recognize what's going on with themselves, what their workplace experience is, and help them to integrate. And for us, that's what it's about. Would you add to that, Jackie?
Yeah, I think it's important to add that it's about making it a win-win. So the new employee feels there's an investment in them, and the organisation are able to see maybe where that new employee may be struggling. You know, so if you look at it, if you think about it, there are 4 stages when somebody starts in a new organisation. It's the pre-entering stage when they're really, really excited. Then we have this stage 1 to 3 months, which you might call the honeymoon phase, where everything's really quite rosy and really quite good. But when we get into the 4 to 9 months part, that really is a settling in. And really it's about assessing through each of those stages what's happening for that person, what's their experience like, and what needs to happen to make their experience or their position much more effective. So the organisation wins with that as well, because then they're able to get more out of that employee, and that employee invests. And then we also have the 12 to 24 months place where we call the career continuation. Are they going to stay with you, or are they going to go? You will know much more sooner if those measurements have taken place, whether that is going to happen or not. So I think it's important to measure for those particular internal job changes and new recruits.
Yeah, and internal job changes, you know, when people get promoted within an organisation or they move to a different department, there's an assumption there that because they are familiar with a particular role or a department that they will integrate into a new role. And often that is with, it's not always with the supportive element that they need. So it's about identifying what that person needs to make them thrive in that changing role also.
Interesting, ladies. And I wonder from the group, are there other thoughts that are coming up for you around what your thoughts are around retention and replacement within organisations and how that links back to the Great Resignation? Oh, Jeff's got his hand up. Thanks for that, Jeff.
Just coming, because you use the word measure a lot, but what do you mean by measure? Can you give us a practical example or an example of what you mean by how do you measure?
What we use, yeah, we use scientific tools, Jeff. We've partnered with a South African university, which is world-class psychometric assessments, and we use individual anonymized questionnaires which are backed with psychometric testing to identify exactly what the individual's needs are, or where they're at in terms of stress and where that's coming from. And we report back to an organisation to support the business about group information. So for example, and trends. So for example, if you have an organisation, it might be that sales are really struggling because they need more supervisory support within a particular team, or that the females are struggling more in that department for some reason, and the 29-year-olds need more support, which is what we've seen evidence of. But it might be in your marketing team that people haven't got clear roles and responsibilities, they're struggling with colleague relationships. So we can identify through using the psychometric testing exactly what's going on to support individuals and business leaders alike. Is that helpful, Jeff? Does that answer?
Yeah, it's great, because I think often, measuring in a lot of organizations involves, appraisals and feedbacks and all this type of thing, and people are often not so keen to say what they're really thinking, or perhaps there's even a self-misunderstanding of what the issues are, or they're afraid to say something.
Yeah.
Whatever. So I think the more independent measurements, particularly anonymous, there can be, the better. So good, thank you.
Anna, you've got your hand up. Would you like to take the floor?
I have. It wasn't really a question, but perhaps a comment, and then I'd like to hear Julie's and Jackie's comments on it. In fact, it plays into Jeff's comment about confidentiality and people not wanting to give feedback. What we found very successful with some of our clients is having a review at the end of the induction process to make sure that people feel that they are integrated into the organisation. It really does pick up where some managers may not have done the induction quite so well and maybe need further training. So it is that kind of continuous improvement and trying to make sure that you do better or even better next time. But I would love to hear Jackie's and Julie's view about what they've found that's worked with organisations.
In what respect? Sorry, Anna.
Well, how have you helped organisations with this kind of Great Resignation of trying to get better at doing good induction and making sure that people are integrated and feeling that they belong to an organisation rather than left high and dry, particularly when they're moving jobs within an organisation?
Yeah, I think, as we were saying, that helping people over the longer period of time and identifying what the type of measurement we use identifies how well they are supported through their job demands and resources, how they're managing their own stress levels, but also how they are integrated into the organisation. Are they familiar with the organisation's history, their values? And values, we believe, is a big thing throughout the Great Resignation. People have really had the opportunity to reflect on their values. So we find it's more helpful to measure the individual, give them some inside-out support, coaching support, and then they can see from their next measurements. So we measure at 3 months, and then at 6 months we're looking to see what's improved, what's maybe deteriorated, why, and help them work through that, but also feedback on a group information, you know, an anonymized way, what is going on in the organization. So like you said, it's feeding back to managers. People need more support in this area through the induction process. You know, maybe that managers need more training, maybe they need to provide more autonomy for their teams. So it's actually providing quite, you know, targeted information back to them for an organization's improvement. And that helps with the retention and attraction of staff, because people are looking for a lot more when they're going for jobs, aren't they? I'm sure I don't need to tell you that, Anna, that you're seeing that people, they're not just wanting a salary, are they?
And I think it's also fair to say that, you know, the younger generation coming into the workforce are not wanting to wait 12 months, 6 months appraisal. They're expecting immediate feedback. And I think the day of holding on and having those conversations 6 or 9 monthly are gone. They need that instant feedback all the time. That's what they're used to, and that's what they want, and that's what they seek. So I think having the measurements at 3, 6 and 9 months is a really good help, support for them, give them a voice. The organisation gets insights, and it's always about fine tuning. It's never about everything's being perfect. It's like, let's continue to keep being curious. Let's continue to keep learning. How can we make this better? But I think we really need to be looking at Gen Z and what they needed, because that's going to be the future of work going forward.
Great.
I'm in there a little bit here, because there's these generational gaps within business as well. And Mike, I've acknowledged that you've got your hand up, and I'll come to you in a minute. But just to raise a thought, how are we addressing the generational gap? Because I've noticed that a lot of people my age in their 40s are leaving and doing something different. And so how are we sort of making sure that we address these 3, 6 and 9 month check-ins, but then also how do we keep and retain our more mature employees throughout time as well? I think that's just a thought of mine to throw out there, because I really like that. And just to recap some of the points that came up then, values are important, coaching is important, support, induction reviews, training, measuring the success, checking in after induction. So these are some really rich thoughts and processes coming up. Mike, I'm going to hand over to you now to add your thoughts.
Sure, thanks, Katie. I think that there were a couple of things I thought were relevant. I mean, Jeff, to your point, we've seen psychological safety being measured. So looking at with, you know, Amy Edmondson's work out of Harvard, where, you know, there's relatively simple tools you can use there where you can measure really how safe do people feel in the organization. Can they voice their own opinion? We see those questions being used in pulse surveys, which are done across the organization quarterly. You know, one organization that we work with quite closely in the charity sector, I think unusually, they invest a lot of money in people development. They can afford to, but they feel that's really important for them. I mean, they've seen quite a shift in how confidently can people voice their opinion to senior leadership, and that's something they measure quite distinctly. And we've seen that move from June 21 at 50%-ish up to June 22 at 80-odd%. So quite a significant shift, and that again aligned with values. But the measures, I think, are really relevant, which is great. I think a Gen Z comment just to share with you is, and this is more family related, but somebody close to us has recently got a grad job with Amazon. And really interestingly, that they've tied her in with options for the first 5 years. A significant amount of money being paid, but to get them over that hump of presumably they lose a lot of people after 2 or 3 years. So, I mean, we're talking tens of thousands of pounds worth of options at graduate entry that they're locking them in with so that they stay presumably over those first couple of humps, which I'd never seen before. But that's people starting this week.
What do you think of that, Mike? You know, from a perspective, do you think people can be locked in just with financial? I don't, you know, I think this is really interesting of what's coming out of the time.
I think a personal reflection would be that I worked for a corporate for a long time, and as I've reflected on after leaving that corporate, and you know, with I got very lucky with pensions and everything else, just in kind of my age group. I probably found maybe for the last 10 years, I would not have even considered leaving that organization, just because I was tied in with the financial benefits of what I would get on exit in terms of pension and all that kind of thing. I see them flipping that and trying to use that at the beginning of someone's career. I don't know whether that will work, to be perfectly honest. I think, we can all read about Amazon. Amazon's got a reputation for the kind of culture it has, particularly in the US. Not quite sure that's the same in the UK, but again, I've got friends who work in coaching, who I work with quite closely, who are actually coaching in Amazon at minorities. So they're being brought into Amazon to coach minorities. And again, they're investing a lot of money to keep their talent and their leadership talent in that way. Whether it will keep the person I'm talking about in Amazon for 5 years, I don't know. Maybe they don't have the responsibilities, so they're willing to forego that kind of money early on in your career, which perhaps you don't, or you're not willing to do later on in your career.
Interesting thoughts, Mike. And I want to go over to Erica actually to hear from Erica, because Erica, you are in the US and you are doing global recruitment. What are your thoughts? I know you've got something to say, but what are your thoughts on what Mike just shared now?
I think it's completely accurate, but when you talk about big companies like Amazon, it sort of discludes how other companies on the smaller scale are approaching this. And on the smaller scale, it's that drive of commitment. It's that here's your growth potential, here's this. It's less about the monetary value. So absolutely correct from what I'm seeing. But also you've got that piece of, and it kind of ties into what I was going to say. The Gen Z is bringing in what I think every new generation to the workforce brings in: something new, something scary, something not our norm, right? And so everybody sort of says, oh, well, what do we do to make them happy? How can we acclimate a little bit, but course them in? And I think what Gen Z has really brought in is equality, and we've seen that with a lot of the things that have gone on in the past 5 years of equality beyond just generation, but also, if we talk about DEI. And so equality is something new that has been sort of brought in, and that really is brought into the negotiation processes of how to retain, how to entice, how to bring in new talent. And what I would say, sort of looping back to, what was talked about earlier, was that when you're employing or you're considering your team and you want to, you're thinking about longevity, you have to always consider the fact of every single individual has a purpose with the company. And so whether you look at your C-suite or your executive team or your directors, or even the individuals on a customer service level, if there's a customer service team, all of those individuals are somewhat essential. And so just looking at them as individuals and at that equality level is really what Gen Z has brought into the workforce. Now, that being said, as we've seen historically, every generation compromises. It's like a marriage, right? Not everybody can just come in and plow through and say, I'm going to make all the changes in the world and everything is adapted to. We've got, we still have baby boomers in the workforce that are strong workers that have seen the success of businesses and they can be learned from. And, we saw that with millennials really acclimating. I mean, we came in guns blazing, me being a millennial myself, and just, expecting change and doing that. And there were a lot of things that flexibility broke in with, of remote work and all of these different things. And those were the requirements to take a job, to stay with a job. So we'll see that flexibility with Gen Z. But I think their biggest impact is equality. They say, I don't care if I've been with a company for 6 months. If you want to commit to me, I will commit to you. And I think that that's the bigger thing. With the bigger companies, they have that monetary advantage. So they can retain and keep good talent because their benefits are amazing. I mean, in the US, Amazon is a recognizable name because for maternity leave, which is somewhat, relevant in my life right now, is they get paternity leave up to 6 months. They get maternity leave up to 12 months, and that's unheard of in the States. And I think I might be inaccurate on some of that. I just know somebody that worked with Amazon. And so those benefits can only really be provided with those super large companies, but they're feeling worth. They feel that from the company. And so, yeah, that would be my overall say, and addressing sort of the last comment.
Erica. And look, I'm going to hear from Ollie and James, and then I'm going to close off this section, this question, because there's a few more questions I want to get through. And then because we are sort of running shorter on time and there is a breakout room issue, we're going to keep in the main room, guys. So I'm just going to remove that part of the agenda, and I hope everybody's okay with that. Ollie, love to hear your thoughts.
I mean, I'm a Gen Z myself, I'm 21, and obviously with our Gen, we're trying to help students become more relevant and relatable to employers and to build that relationship. And I think, Erica, what you were mentioning, like it is like a marriage, it is a relationship between employers and younger talent as well. And I think, again, Mike, you raised this, that, or Erica did, generations are the same. When a new generation comes, there's always going to be a compromise, there's always going to be something new, but it's never been a problem with money as such. There's always been big companies around, there's always been big bonuses around, but I think what's really important to focus on is the work culture, because in a relationship which involves that depth of life impact for a young person, but also for an employer, building that work culture and environment, I think, is way beyond what money can do. I think the Gen Z audience now of young talent, they're aware that they want to build more of a lifestyle and an enjoyable workplace. And something that's really important to consider, 26% of graduates leave within the first 6 months of starting a new job. And that's ultimately not because of the money or the pay package, but because their expectations of going into a graduate job are here, and employers are expecting them to do 10 times the amount, and it's just completely misaligned. So I think the first step towards solving this problem, especially for Gen Z, a younger or graduate talent, is to get that alignment just right. Then you can start sort of focusing on the other things like packages and financial gain. But yeah, I think the really focus point should be on the relationship and the environment, not purely just on the financial gain, because I don't think Gen Z need that.
Can I just add into that what everybody has been saying as well? And I think there's a part to this as well, is that the pandemic has brought life very much into focus, and people are reevaluating their values and what they want from their lives right now. And that includes their working life. So what maybe they tolerated before, they may be not prepared to tolerate anymore. Because when COVID was around, death was around, and that brings focus of life very, very much to the forefront. So I think people have really been looking as well at what do they want from their working lives. And I think that's another equation that comes into the Great Resignation.
Absolutely, Jackie. So moving along, James, so I'd like you to share your thoughts.
Yeah, hi there, guys. So there were two parts, just quite quickly. The first was a personal experience. The second, maybe just a prompt for discussion. The first being that personal experience. I recently, as I say, joined a Climb, and a business that I was at before seemingly had quite a cultural issue with delivering on promises. It was almost like a tap that they turned on. So when they needed something, or they needed a growth spurt, they needed to hit a certain target they'd maybe promised to the board, anything was a goer in terms of promotions. And so I've spent 10-15 years working in business development, whether it be commission or whatever kind of carrot you're trying to dangle to that individual, that would be met, and then it would almost be turned off. And so anybody that was then asking or felt that they were ready at that moment in time, well, unlucky, we just promoted, Bill, Bob, and Ben, to use a quick. So that I thought was one thing just to share as a cultural piece on consistency, I guess, in the promises that you offer. And that goes back to, I can't remember, Jackie, was it yourself that mentioned the stages?
Mm-hmm.
If you bring somebody in on a proactive, do more, get more type culture, and you can't deliver on it, then you can have a disconnect at any one of those phases. And then the second thing I was just prompting in for discussion, thought it might be interesting, was, are we assuming in the rounds that the discussion here on the Great Resignation is always on top quality staff that we don't want to lose? Because the other thing that I found is that you kind of get slight overconfidence on underperformers, thinking, well, it's not quite working out here, I could probably get a job and a bit of a pay rise if I move. And then they hand in their resignation and they're a bit offended when they don't get counted or some sort of response to say, oh no, please don't leave. But actually they were an underperformer, not just worried about the high performers, looking elsewhere.
Good question, James. I'll throw that out to the audience.
I think it's about knowing what is going on within your organisation as a whole. So it's understanding each department that you have. What are the jobs demands and job resources like? Are they imbalanced or imbalanced? And if they're imbalanced, why? It's understanding your why. It's knowing, I've said this before in other webinars that we've been on, that well-being is your hidden cost. And if you don't know what's going on with your people, that's a big hidden cost. So it's always important to know and be curious about your people, what's going on. If they're underperforming, why is it? It might not be that they're wanting to underperform. It might be that there's something missing in their resources that will enable them to perform. So it's important, in my opinion, to understand what's going on with your people and your work unit.
I think interesting way to put it into perspective, isn't it, Jackie?
Yes.
Yeah, to bring it to life. Well, it's not just any one individual. It's about what's happening with the collective culture. So on that note, Gail, you had your hand up. Did you want to add something?
It was more about the comment previously about on Gen Z, actually, from my dissertation work that I was doing, which was interviewing people in the first sort of like 5 to 10 years of their working life, young females. It was all about having a sense of purpose and knowing they were adding value in the organisation. That was absolutely critical to them. It was not about money. It was about there was 3 things: it was adding value, it was about training and development. What that was absolutely way more important to them than the salary they were on. And the third thing was career pathways. Really understanding where I can go next. They were the 3 critical things at that, that stage in their career that were so important to them. So, and also then on the, I suppose, the final point about benefits, making sure those benefits at the Gen Z level, Z level are appropriate. So less about healthcare and more about gym memberships. It's kind of being, that's the converse of it kind of thing, but that's what really floated their boats, really. But it was absolutely about having a sense of purpose, values again, and and sort of, but how are they contributing and feeling very frustrated if they didn't see how they fitted in and where they were adding value.
Reading your dissertation. Thank you for those thoughts, Gail. I think they're really spot on in terms of even what I look for as a Gen X. In what I need from my work as well. And Steve, you've got your hand up. Would you like to share?
Yeah, I think fundamentally, when you're looking at well-being, it actually relates to an element of leadership versus management. So I think a good leader will absorb the pressure that they're getting and will go to the person who is meant to be under pressure and to talk to them about why they're struggling. So they could be struggling for personal reasons, medical well-being reasons, mental health well-being reasons, and so forth. And I think it's really important that actually as a leader, whether you're a middle management or upwards, that you look after your employees to ensure that their well-being is looked after, because they will give you much more loyalty in that role. They're more likely to stay. And actually, from what I've seen, the generational side of things doesn't make any difference.
Yeah, and Steve, I think you're linking back to what James was saying about underperformance as well. If an individual is, if you haven't got consistency in a culture, or people feel that they've not being valued, or then that can lead to that underperformance, and it's looking to why that individual is underperforming, isn't it? And if they're not supported, all those things lead to because people start to feel disengaged, don't they? It's like, I come in with 100% effort, but my experience is I'm only now offering 65.
And then presenteeism kicks in, and that's hard to measure and hard to manage. And when it does happen, a lot of managers don't see it, but the leaders actually pick up on it and ask people what's wrong and help bring them back to their levels of loyalty and wanting to succeed within that business.
fortunately, we're able to measure presenteeism and absenteeism and give those costings to the company, what it's going to cost them if things don't change, because it is a very important cost.
Very much so. And just to bring it back to the agenda, we are running out of time. And I just wanted to quickly share with some of the other questions, which I do feel we've really touched on today as a group. And I know that there's been some really strong shares here today, lots of thoughts and lots of vibration coming through the group in terms of, you know, the passion coming through. So thank you very much. Now, a couple of the other questions was around retaining people and about the managers feeling stressed. And Steve, I think you hit the nail on the head. Leadership is something that really comes over time, and leadership development is a critical part of making sure businesses function. There's ways to measure that, as Jackie and Julie have shared. Burnout has come up, well-being has come up. Psychometric tools and assessments has come up as well, and that was on our agenda for questions, and I feel like we've covered that. There is a couple of other questions, though, and there's one that I want everybody to have their fingers on the typey button, and in the chat bar, I just want you to answer it, what your thoughts are. It's a global, okay, where is it? Have we reached the peak of the Great Resignation? If not, when do you think we will? What are your thoughts? Is it a long-term thing? Put it in the chat. I just want to get everybody's thoughts on this to share. And then there's one more I'd like to get everyone's thoughts on as well, which is a funny one, because I know my answer to that one. We never will, Chris. Mid-20. Okay, I should be taking bets, Anna. I might put a betting game up so that we can all see who wins on the date. Long term, it's a big problem. I believe this is long term, within the next 12 months. Long term, higher turnover will continue. Thank you for those thoughts. One other question I'd like to hear your thoughts on. It is a global issue. Like, this is not just a phenomenon. It's a real thing that we're actually experiencing. I think we've uncovered that as leaders. With it being a global issue, the resource shortage. So where has everybody gone? Where do you think everyone's gone? I'll tell you where I think everyone's gone. Everybody had furlough and they went to the beach. And they had such a great time getting back in touch with themselves. They had to rethink about what their next step was. That's my personal opinion. Who else? What else? The vineyard. Yep. I bet you that's Jeff. Yep, that's Jeff. Starting their own business. Yes, I've seen a lot of that. A lot of startups, a lot of people out there turning their hobbies into businesses, which is quite exciting. Any other thoughts? Some have retired early and become self-employed. Yes. So I think the point of this is they're going somewhere. It's just about understanding what's the human behavior behind it. What is the driving force about what people need? And if you think about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs and how that has shifted over the years in terms of how we've spent that time with ourselves, and we've looked mortality in the face over lockdown. I think, Mary, you said this. It's just really accelerated how we see the shifts within business, and it's happening much quicker. Organizations need to be much more prepared. They definitely need to engage with leaders, just like the people here in the room today. And I want to thank all of you for your contribution to today's discussion. Julian Jackie, thank you for your expertise. You guys have really hit the nail on the head when it comes to helping businesses through these challenges. So please, I'd really enjoy if you all connect with each other. And one more poll before we finish, our exit poll. What are your thoughts now in terms of what we've learned today, in terms of your confidence on what the Great Resignation might mean? Still curious, I see. I'll just give a couple of minutes, one more minute for everybody. Nearly there. Thank you, guys. I'm going to end the poll there. So it seems that we've come in feeling curious and we've come out feeling curious, even more curious, actually, because it's actually 62% up from 44%. So if anything, I think that's a really, really good outcome. And look, we can't solve the world in 1 hour. But what we can do, and I would really encourage all of you to save the chat, please. connect with each other offline. You are all experts in what you do. You all bring something very different to the table, and you've got something different that you can offer and collaborate with. Julian, Jackie are here to help as well. If you're looking for that extra resource to support you in how you consult with businesses and how you work with business leaders. So please connect with one another. I know Julie and Jackie are going to reach out and thank you individually. Would you like, are there any last thoughts or words before we close off the session? No? Julie, Jackie, anything you'd like to say before we go?
I was going to say thank you so much for everybody for contributing. I just feel there's so much more to say, but it's been a marvelous discussion, and thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I agree. It's been a really good discussion, good discussion. And I wish I could have put my hand up a bit more, but anyway, really good, really good. And yeah, I wanted to talk about how you could, the ethos of the brand and people and bringing it all together into one. Anyway. That's
and actually, Chris, Chris does you do have a very good tool for those Gen Zs out there to do personal branding, and I think that a lot of the work is around helping.
Katie, it's also about organizational, their brand, and how about this is a big idea. If you can get your people, your people in your organization to help define your brand. But that's a big step, big step for companies to take. Anyway.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said, and there's still many more questions for us to keep asking. I think, you know, we're going to debrief after the call today and have a look at what next for this conversation. We're not finishing it here. So if you'd like to get involved in more discussions, more roundtables and collaborations that we've got going on, please reach out to us here at Global Chamber. We're a global organisation, 190 countries. We're here to help. We focus on international expansion and investment, but we're also a part of a big group of business leaders globally. So reach out to myself, Julie and Jackie. It's great to see you all. Thank you for your support and your time and your contribution, and we'll see you soon. Oh, actually, before we go, Jeff's actually doing laughing yoga at our next meetup in September. So I'll send you an invite for that, because we're going to do a bit of fun on our Zoom call. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you all as well.
Great.
And you don't have to do yoga, you just have to laugh.
I can well, you can tell by the way I look, I'm definitely not going to be doing any yoga.
Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Jackie, do you want to stay on for a sec?
Yeah, that'd be good.